Affordable housing and the need for a diverse housing stock have been a topic of many discussions on Long Island. Long Island's housing needs are not what they were 50 years ago. The model of a community composed entirely of single-family homes is being challenged by many, such as young people that are just entering the workforce and empty nesters who either want a different lifestyle or cannot afford a home of their own. But this shift has not been without its tensions and debate. Two Huntington projects, the 379-unit Avalon Bay rental community on 5th Street in Huntington Station, and the 117-unit Highland Green limited equity cooperative in Melville, shine a lens on the many facets of the affordable housing debate in Huntington. The needs, the solutions, and the reasons behind the controversy.
This piece of property was originally zoned for single-family homes. Honestly, it was really a conversation that I had with Supervisor Patrone years ago when we were first looking at this site, and his desire to do something different than the traditional single-family home development, which is appropriate in many circumstances, but does not provide the diversity of housing choices that we were trying to accomplish, and that the supervisor thought that the town needed to really provide those housing choices for all the residents of the town of Huntington.
You were a part of the Avalon approval as an advocate for an affordable housing component on that, because as we know, the majority of the units at Avalon are market rate rental housing. But what was that process like, and what do you recall?
It was 2 years of intense conflict, and it came out of, I think, an understandable fear from some of the residents of Huntington Station, which for many, many years had been the area where most of the affordable housing was built. As we went through the process, we tried to keep their concerns in mind, and we even refigured our own messaging and realized that this was not just about housing. This was an economic development issue. So that when you talk about Avalon Bay, as we did, we shifted our own messaging from we need affordable housing to we need the economic revitalization of Huntington Station.
The great thing about working for a company like we do is we have actual school children data, and we're able to provide that to the school districts as we go through this process. And we did the same thing here. And many had projections of up to 500 school children coming out of this development. And at the end of the day, from year to year, our school children impact is anywhere from 40 to 70 kids.
It didn't create the amount of problems for the school district as we had expected, which is good. I think much like the Avalon in Melville, it probably has a lot of non-custodial single parents. So we didn't get nearly as many kids as we thought we would.
So Rulin Road, speak to that process. You said 15 years, which we all recognize at that press conference that I recall. What was that process like?
Pretty much the same. Local fears that the wrong kind of people are going to come in, the wrong kind of architecture is going to stare us in the face every morning when we get up. It's going to add to the children in the Dix Hill School District. It's going to add to traffic. But in the end, I remember that last meeting in this room, just so many people getting up and saying, whoa, kind of what you said. What is this all about? We've seen the plans. We've looked at the building. We've seen what's happened with Avalon. Very few kids. Now, why are we so nervous about Ruland? It's going to be the same deal. And sure enough, it was.
And I think what finally was the tipping point on Ruland Road, and to former Supervisor Patrone's credit, was his concept of a co-op with a small type of ownership component to it, because that's always, I think, what we hear a lot of is, you know, renters are not invested in the community. They don't care as much as owners. I don't necessarily buy that, but it was a way to bridge the gap and an olive branch that I think the supervisor employed there.
The residents can get entry into the project without putting large amounts of money down where they are shareholders in a cooperative corporation. Well, the concern was that we were going to be overrun, that we had 117 units, and that there were going to be hundreds of children here. And the reality was that right now, our records indicate we have about 29 children that are attending local schools.
It really, at the end of the day, is more for your child. You want to put them in a place that they're secure, they can go to school, and the only resources are available for them. So this is definitely a spectacular opportunity for me.
Dick, can you speak to the need for a diversity of housing stock, both in the town and in the region?
We have a younger population now, very often burdened with college debt, marrying later, having children later, who really aren't quite ready for the single-family model, the 90%. You also have a growing senior population that wants to stay on Long Island, but don't want to stay in single-family homes. The other problem we have, and it's a very serious one, is that our housing stock is so expensive that you have it more and more unaffordable. So we are losing folks. So we have to rethink the model. The 90% has been great. Raising kids, a single-family home is great, but it's not for everybody, and I think we need to recognize that.
What are the challenges that you've seen to workforce or affordable housing, whatever you call it, the one that's going to fill that niche where people can't make it into a market house and affordable units are there and getting approved?
I think the main barrier we have is that fear that we're going to have these high-rise, low-income housing complexes that will flood us with kids, raise our taxes, bring all kinds of traffic, and turn us into this sort of crowded, semi-slum New York City outlying region. None of that is true.
What are the type of numbers that you've seen in the lottery system? What is the need and how is it reflected in that lottery?
Yeah, I think the lottery system is a good indicator of what the demand really is for these affordable homes. When you have a lottery, we literally have hundreds of people apply to be the winner of that lottery to get an affordable home. We recently did one for one house, and there was 400 people. There were 400 people applying for that house. But it really gives you a feel for the number of people that really need an affordable home.
Because there's such a big demand for this type of housing and for the affordability levels that exist here, there was a lottery system that was set up, and it was done in conjunction with the town of Huntington, with the Long Island Housing Partnership, and the New York State Homes and Community Renewal, which is the housing agency that was involved in assisting in funding for this project. There were over 700 applications that we received for 117 units. So it was a very significant number of folks that were interested in getting occupancy here.
I remember the first year that I did this, around 2000 or thereabouts. I remember Councilman Israel, who would become our congressman, saying, "Where are the supporters of affordable housing?" I think in these years, through public education, through organizing, through recognizing the need, through good media, through good policies, through good creation of good-looking housing like Avalon Bay, we've shifted. And so it's a little easier now than it was in the beginning when I got involved, but we still have work to do because 70% of Long Islanders recognize the need for affordable housing. And I'm thinking as an advocate, whoa, that's good. But 60% said, not my neighborhood. So that's the moment of truth, when you come into Dix Hills, where I live, and you say, listen, we have this idea. Those prejudices, those fears, those stereotypes are still going to rise up to the surface, but it's not really as wild as it had been 20 years ago. We've made progress, but we have work to do.
This cannot be a one community issue. When you put too many low-income people in one community, such as Huntington Station that has been done over the last 40 or 50 years, especially with the urban renewal, you create a whole set of problems that are unintended.
I'm not a big over fan of government intrusion in markets, but this is one where really the government is almost the only answer. There's a limited amount of land, there's strong demand, there's a lot of news in right now about how market rate houses get snapped up in a day. There's a lot of demand even for market rate housing. So the prices of the land, the prices of the houses are only going to go up. And the only way we're going to be able to create or preserve affordable housing is if the government takes a role in it.
There is such a demand for market rate housing that no developer in the world who's acting in his self-interest, which he should, and who's driven by a profit motive and maybe investors, is ever going to fill that need unless it's really an act of charity, which you don't see a lot of that.
Well, businesses aren't in the business of giving their money away, so they have to be able to at least break even. And that requires some kind of intervention. There are certainly things that don't involve money that could be done. Improving and streamlining the process is one. The work that we do, reducing the amount of opposition in the community. Every year that a project drags on when somebody's trying to build an affordable unit, costs them more money. That has to be factored into the money that they have to recover. So the less opposition there is, the more smoothly things will run. And that's one of the things that we do at the Housing Coalition, is try to get the word out there that these things are needed, that they can look nice, that they are not a detriment to the community, and that we should be encouraging them rather than trying to discourage them.